We can go first.
That's great. I would love for you to go first. So we're here at our first negotiations meeting. Our facilitator has not joined us yet, but we've decided that we feel confident proceeding because the purpose or the agenda on this meeting is just to share our notice letter and our issue statements, and then hopefully kind of start to see if any of them align together, and to then come up with an order that we're going to talk through them at our upcoming meetings. And Jill has kindly offered to go through their notice letter and issue statements first.
Yes, and the 5 of us from the NEA-Shawnee mission side will, I shouldn't say side because we're all a team, kind of go around and each, take a few. What do you think about putting things on the screen at all?
Oh,
I didn't know.
That's a
if
great
you
idea.
wanted to do that? Okay.
Yeah.
I will share my screen for our, and then as I go through them, you guys can just say them. Let me close things. I don't want that tab open. I'm just teasing. Okay. So we're in the boardroom. All right. Oh, I thought I heard her voice. I'll make this larger. All right. John's up.
All right, I think I have issue number 1. So our first issue is the salary schedule for compensation. So just the basic, how do we ensure that certified staff are adequately compensated for their workload? How do we reward teachers for their longevity and dedication to the district? So we have the usual issue focuses of increasing dollar amounts in each cell, step and column movement, longevity, pay and frequency, compensation for additional duties, compensation for unused temporary leave, and continuation of the salary schedule subcommittee that we started on last year.
Let's say sub. There you go. All right. Did I say this was mine? Probably. Issue number 2, and we separated this out last year as well, the supplemental salary schedule. And last year we had a subcommittee for that as well. And our issue statement, I don't know that we changed it very much, but how do we ensure that our certified staff are adequately and equitably compensated for their supplemental work? We would like to, or to try to focus it, we're wanting to review the supplemental salary schedule, ensure that the supplemental pay is equitable between all levels, high school, middle school, elementary, for the amount of work the staff are doing. So similar to last year's. All right. And these are in the folder. Thank you, John. Can we close those? Number 3.
All right, and issue number 3 we're bringing up is dedicated PLC professional learning community times, and that's within the contract day. Our issue statement, how do we provide equitable time to PLC during the contract day across all levels? And then the issue focus is elementary versus secondary plans to accomplish current and future dedicated PLC time.
I do think that typically she would ask us more about the focus part, but I think that just introducing them for now is a good place to start.
Yeah, maybe there we go. Maybe when we start to group them, because we have a PLC issue too, spoiler alert, we can see how closely they're aligned by talking about the focus that we're each seeing.
Okay. Great. Number
4, don't I?
Yeah.
Issue statement number 4 is regarding the calendar. How can we provide adequate time for staff to be mentally and physically prepared for the start of each semester? Our issue focuses around prep time to begin semester and comparisons to other school districts.
Maybe I should, well, never mind. to talk about like a subcommittee. I know that sometimes I would meet with Dr. Darren Dennis, so
Yep.
might be a.
Okay.
Are you making edits on the?
No, yes.
Which one are you editing?
Why, did you change something?
Oh, that's in the other folder.
Oh,
I put all of our issue statements
got it,
in, everybody can see
got it.
as well. So,
Darn. That's okay.
what did you put there?
I just wrote subcommittee. I forgot that I'm in our folder.
Okay, issue statement number 5 is physically aggressive students assaulting staff. Our issue statement is, how do we ensure physical and emotional well-being of staff who deal with physically aggressive students? And our focus areas are repeated physical assaults on staff result in injury, emotional stress and anxiety about potential future assaults, protection of other students in classroom building, loss of instructional time, impact on student learning.
You're right, maybe I should go in here, open it here. Right.
Issue statement number 6 is staffing and caseloads. Our issue statement is, how do we attract and retain staff? Our focus is SPED, the 5 to 7, secondary number of preps at the elementary, and probably at the secondary is the SPED caseloads, but I think and then the last one is elementary special schedule.
Okay. This one. Not used to us being so quiet.
All right. Issue 7 deals around the cell phone policy. So our issue statement is, how can we protect instructional time as well as student and staff privacy? And our issue focuses cell phones, student usage and recording in school buildings.
And then I think,
Oh, yep. Now it's
I
leave.
clicked on 8, but it still says 7.
Oh, yeah,
I'll,
Okay.
oh. I can just, well, no, you're right. He'll fix it. Okay. Number 9. NEA-Shawnee mission and I believe you guys call it the new team member academy. How can we ensure NEA-Shawnee mission is able to communicate effectively and efficiently regarding the negotiated agreement with members of the bargaining unit that are new hires? A focus, it's a little bit longer than our typical focus, but new hires need education regarding the negotiated agreement, and the association is the representative of all members of the bargaining unit.
When is that new team member academy? You guys typically speak at that, right?
We introduce at the very, very beginning with Dr. Hubbard.
Okay, just to make sure I was thinking of the right event.
Hey, look, it's fixed.
All right. Our 8th issue would be just leave time. So our issue statement is, how can we address the need to provide temporary leave that meets personal and family needs? And our issue focus is temporary leave and then maternal and paternal leave.
All right. I'm gonna get off the screen. That was fast.
Anyone else from any?
Sorry, that was it. That was number 9.
Sorry, I don't want to cut
I
anybody off.
should have told you that.
No more.
And then I have the actual paper
Notice letter.
notice letter, yep.
I just added ours
Okay.
to the folder. I don't think that it adds, I mean, everything is fleshed out in our issue statements, but it's where we give the statutorily required notice of possible provisions within our current P&A that might be impacted. And so like we talked about at our training, I tried to I phrased ours differently than we did before, because The notice letter would be working backwards in the IBB process, because we would be saying like, we want this change to the P&A, and of course, that's not what we're supposed to be thinking about, but we're still
Right.
statutorily required to do it. So it's in there, and I phrased it to say like,
Oh.
this provision may be impacted by a solution.
I just realized. In our notice letter, we do have something about health insurance,
Yeah,
but I realized that we did not make an issue statement
statement.
separate with that.
we will obviously talk about that regardless.
Okay.
I guarantee you.
Wonderful.
Okay, let me share my screen. We did not get so organized as to decide who would be saying what. So I will invite my team members to chime in and provide further explanation. We do cooperatively develop them, so some people will know more about some issue statements than I will. 0320. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Okay. Our first issue statement is one that we have had every year for the past 4 years, so you have seen it before. It is an exact duplicate of of previous issue statements just about the procedure that we use in this room. At this point, I think we've hammered it out and we're just doing it without even thinking about it. But it's something, again, that brings the board comfort to ensure that we all know that we still have to comply with the Negotiations Act in the background. If we have time today, we could potentially look at the same MOU we've used every year that has our meeting norms and stuff in it, and that would take care of this issue statement. So it's just kind of to get us all on the same page on the procedure that we are using for negotiations. So I won't go through that in detail because we've reviewed it lots of years before. Okay, our second issue is on late resignations. And our problem is that our late resignation provision is too permissive in allowing teachers to break their contract mid-school year. Teachers are not sufficiently held to honor their contracts for the one school year that they committed to serve. Having teachers submit late resignations is detrimental to their students, their coworkers, and to administration and HR. Our focus, just for a reminder on the history, is that we've experienced in Shawnee Mission a problematic number of late resignations. And by late, we're typically talking about during the school year. Again, our focus is that we don't feel like we are able to get a suitable replacement for that person when they resign late. And that causes stress on that person's coworkers. It causes a disruption to the educational environment. We've worked on this. We've done some really good work. We just like to have this team sort of look at our numbers and for Dr. Schumacher and I to talk about some of the problematic situations that have come across under our new late resignation provision and talk through it a little bit. So, and this reads again very much like past issue statements that we've had. Okay, our third issue statement is essentially about insufficient time at the elementary level. And so I've noted that this one could be broken into 3 separate issue statements, but in terms of insufficient time, we're looking at insufficient instructional minutes, insufficient PLC time, so this kind of aligns with the issue that you guys already raised, and sometimes problems with having adequate supervision for students during dismissal time. The issue statement raises the issue of the daily work schedule for elementary teachers being shorter than the daily work schedule for secondary teachers. And due to that difference in time, the primary issue is that, and you've heard Dr. Dennis talk about this before, I know I've heard him talk about it before, is that we just don't have flexibility in the school calendar because we're so short on elementary minutes. And so it impacts what we can do district-wide on the calendar. And then, of course, the secondary issue is that even with the 2 staff meetings a month being given up, we don't have equitable PLC time across all 3 levels. And there is, I don't think this is an issue at every elementary school, I will say. We do seek principal feedback when we do these statements, and I know some principals said, we're really struggling at the very end of the school day to make sure all of our students are adequately supervised. And I don't know what Stephanie will do with this. She might make us break it apart, so that we're individually looking at those as 3 separate problems.
Can I ask just a quick
Yeah.
question? With the issue focus on part A, so the contract day is shorter, it's 20 minutes shorter, but is the student contact day still 7 hours like the other, like middle and high? Because they would still be with the students for 7 hours, 8:10 to 3:10? I just mean,
We'd have to look at the minutes to
I was
see
just
how they
curious.
align with what the secondary minutes are,
Got it.
middle school and high school,
Okay.
but off the top of, I don't know that off the top of my head either.
It would clearly be data that we would need to look at.
Sure, and
And I
that's
think we
getting
would
into
ask
it
Dr.
before we need to
Dennis
get into
to
it, yeah.
explain, because I can't tell you sitting here now why he's always saying elementary minutes are a problem in the calendar. So we would definitely have him come in and explain
okay,
that.
perfect.
And
Yeah.
this may be something that's prime for a subcommittee with some elementary teachers on it and our directors of elementary on it. That would just be an idea I would have to get people who know the elementary world to potentially focus on it in a subcommittee setting.
We have student contact 8:10 to 3:10, just
Okay.
for any context.
Got it.
With students arriving in our classroom starting at 8, but technically our contact time starts at 8:10.
Got it.
And then you also subtract the
Lunch.
lunch and 2 recesses, so it's like 360 minutes.
So just eliminate recess.
Rachel.
I know my kid is
No.
You just
so mad at me today. He's gonna be
No.
so mad. That's the only
Okay,
thing he
I
talks about after
see.
school.
So, I see, because recess wouldn't be subtracted at the middle or high, but would we take away, it doesn't matter. We'll talk about that when we get there. Thank you for that.
Yeah. I think it's just worth looking at, like.
Sure.
Because obviously, if you did extend the contract day and you did extend student minutes, that would shift other pieces of the calendar. So I think it's worth looking at. And then number 4 is exactly the PLC issue that you guys already raised. So I imagine we'll just end up marrying those into one issue statement. But just to remind everybody, we have only a pilot program in the PNA for this year.
Right.
So it will sunset at the end of this year. So we need to look at all the data that's been gathered and decide what we want to do going forward for next school year. Just in my time in buildings, I've heard overall really positive things and very strong opinions about what they would like going forward. So we'll obviously need to get that figured out for our elementary teachers for next school year. Okay. Issue number 5, and I might let Dr. Schumacher chime in a little bit here because he wanted to add this issue statement because it's something that impacts how good it is to work in Shawnee Mission, right? And that's the issue that we've experienced, although I have heard some good numbers lately of having a low sub-fill rate at times. And so we wanted to brainstorm with you guys to see if there's ways that, if we could, as a team, see if there's any good ways to continue to try and get our sub-fill rate higher and higher and higher. We listed out here all the things that we've already been doing, but we want to see if there's anything more that we can do. So, building subs, raising substitute pay rates, bonuses for subs on Mondays and Fridays, a sub-referral program, increased pay for SPED substitutes. Most of our efforts right now have at least been pointed at our substitute teachers. So maybe thinking if there are other things that we can do to decrease the low sub-fill rate because that causes stress on our professional employees.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think this is truly an example of a collaboration where we're kind of at a loss. We've tapped into everything we could think of, and so we want some help because we do really feel that those interests below are incredibly impactful. We know that it's impacting teachers' work-life balance. We know that it's impacting their colleagues, when they're having to backfill those open positions. We know it's impacting student achievement, all of those different pieces. We felt strongly when we went with Kelly. If you guys were back then when we did that, we were having trouble with fill rate then, and it got super awesome with Kelly initially. We wanted to ensure that if a teacher wanted to take a leave day, that they would have no concern with getting a sub, that they could do it without any concerns. And I don't think we got that right now. So we just want some help.
Okay. Issue number 6 is something else that has just come up in our discussions in cabinet, and that is teachers saving for retirement. And so Russ Knapp, our CFO, has filled us in on our numbers with respect to our offering of a 403B retirement plan for all our employees. But the data shows that we have very few teachers that are contributing to a 403B. Of course, as teachers, all of us have capers, but we feel that it's important that you save for retirement in a full and complete plan. Capers has changed over time, and we'd like to see if there's something we could do to increase participation in 403B by our entire group of professional employees. I'm realizing now, and I'm going to apologize that I've used the word teachers. When I say that in this setting, I'm inclusive of pre-K through 12, nurses, everyone that's covered under the P&A. So please forgive me if I revert to that word because they're the largest makeup of our professional employee group.
Can I add a couple of things here?
Please.
So the other piece that is important to know is that we do have a benefits committee that Jill is a part of, and we just met with them a month or so ago, and we're looking at maybe going to a single vendor where right now there's 4 different vendors where you can choose from for a 403B, and there's some belief that a single vendor would help in this process. But we wonder if there's some other things that the district can do to incentivize staff to save for their retirement. And from at least my department's perspective, it's about recruiting and retention, right? So if we're incentivizing it in some way, if there's something that we can do that's different than other districts, it will help us recruit and retain quality staff.
All right. Issue statement number 7, we've talked about professional learning amongst the IBB team for a couple years, and it's just something, I know you guys have the same with some of your issue statements that have come up, where we feel like we're marching up the mountain and we're getting really close, but we want to make sure that it's not lost in the shuffle. And so we wanted to spend some time during this season of negotiations talking about PL time. Do you guys call it that? PL? I don't know.
Professional learning, professional development.
PD? Okay. So again, looking at the calendar and seeing if there's enough time for professional learning. And I don't know if maybe that kind of goes hand in hand with getting ready for the school year, if that's something different, but it is grouped in, I would think, with the calendar issues. And so I'll go ahead and go through our interest here. We've worked really hard as a team the past couple of years to improve professional learning opportunities, and we will continue to do that, to take feedback from our professional employees and try and make it better every year so that our employees find it a valuable use of their time. And so we want to make sure that our employees have an adequate opportunity to benefit from professional learning opportunities. And one of the issues is that on days that have been designated for professional learning, we're sometimes not able to maximize professional learning, or it's broken up due to breaks that happen during the day. For example, we have to still provide plan time during those days under our current P&A. And then obviously, and actually I think I pulled some of these from the national NEA webpage as to why like professional learning is important for teachers. Like I Googled it and that was the first thing that came up. But of course, we want to invest in career growth of our professional employees, expand their knowledge and skill base, and ultimately have it result in academic growth for our students. And then issue number 8 is compensation, which we must negotiate every year. We do have sort of some sub-focuses here that I'll highlight. One is addressing the need for additional leadership support at Horizons High School. So we want to put a pin in that and remember that when we're talking about compensation. And then we also wanted to talk about the compensation model for eSchool and look at that this year too, when we're going through compensation and the supplemental salary schedule. Obviously, we want to remain competitive and attract teachers to Shawnee Mission and honor the great work that our employees do. We also owe a duty to our community to use our resources in a financially responsible manner and to be good stewards of taxpayer money. And that's it. Number 8 was our last one. We didn't separate out, and I don't know that we mentioned, I think health insurance might be on our issue statement, but regardless, I think we tackle that with compensation in May usually.
Yeah.
So, I will get off the screen here. If I can. Okay. So, I don't know if we can like run and grab, if we have any large like note pages or if we even need that. But am I remembering correctly that the next thing we do is try and, you guys had 9 individual statements, we had 8. It's to try and say, hey, it makes sense, or these are close enough to the same that we should tackle them together.
Right.
I didn't write ours out. Oh, you do? Great. I was talking.
Love it.
Okay, so please.
Okay, so I have NEA 1 and 2, which is our salary scheduled supplemental, going with SMSD 8, which is compensation.
Mm-hmm.
I'd put 6 with that.
I put NEA 3 and 4 kind of together with Shawnee Mission's 3 and 4 and 7.
What, remind me of our 3, 4, and 7?
Your 4 was PLC, 3 was instructional time, 7 was professional learning.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And then I grouped NEA 6 and Shawnee Mission 2, which is staffing caseloads for NEA, and then late resignations for 2. I don't know if those would go together, maybe, I don't know.
Okay. Or I don't know that we could talk about them in the same time, like, we could order them close together for sure.
Well, you could probably put the low sub-fill rate in there as well.
And that could, I mean, there's a lot that we could group together, because if I'm already thinking of solutions to some of ours, and then I'm thinking, oh, that solution might go with
That's
another one, so I just think we just have to be careful.
And that's, I think, why Stephanie has had us do that.
Okay.
Because if they're interrelated, or we see that a solution could overlap.
So our issue of leave, I mean, when you go on leave, you have to have a substitute. So I thought that maybe those would go together.
What number is our low subfill rate?
5.
5, okay.
And our leave is 8 for NEA.
Got it. Okay.
But you guys talked too fast over there, and I wasn't sure what went with what. I missed a few.
What do you have?
You said NEA 1 and 2 going with SMSD 8
And 6.
and SMSD 6?
Yep.
Okay. And then the next one after that.
The NEA 3 PLC and plan time, NEA 4 calendar, going with SMSD 3 instructional time, SMSD 4 PLC, SMSD 7 professional learning.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
And then the other grouping, NEA 6 staffing and caseload, possibly with SMSD 2 late resignation and 5 low subfill rate.
Okay.
And then the low subfill rate also goes with NEA 8 about leave. That's all I could group together.
Yep, and then I think these others, NEA 5, aggressive student behaviors, 7, cell phone policy, and 9, new team member academy are probably just
Standalones.
singles, yeah. So then the next thing she does is say, we try not to tackle, especially because we have majority of our team this is the first year. And so we try not to tackle things that we know are gonna be challenging to talk about and might be really difficult to get to a solution or like really complex right off the bat. So she's like, what's the low hanging fruit? What's something that you can talk about and maybe get a check mark in your first meeting and feel like you're going. So obviously, all these issues of pay, compensation, supplemental salary schedule, those are for May. So we know it's not gonna be that.
Do you think that there ever would be a way for earlier budget talks? I mean, how soon do you guys start looking at?
So I feel like someone else asked me that. It is a question for Russ as to
Okay.
when he can get numbers that are good numbers and not guesswork numbers.
Okay.
I mean, he'll start guessing for us pretty early on and then with a bunch of disclaimers like, but I don't know. It depends if the legislature does this or that.
Right.
So I will ask him and we'll see if it's something that we can tee up. I personally think that it's good not to, leave it for the very last.
Right.
Could we get like information for like what a 1% would be, just to do
And-
calculations?
Yeah,
or-
That's on our notice letter, things that we're asking for. So is
Okay.
that we do that anyway, like
Yeah.
every
So
year.
remind me, it's how much does a 1% across the schedule cost?
And then step and column.
Uh-huh. Yep, that is no problem to get those numbers because it'll be obviously different this year than last year's.
I think didn't we have benefits amount as well? But we had a decrease last year.
Yeah, and I
Which
don't
we
know that
didn't
we would
use.
have that information right now.
I've
Like
heard
going
nothing.
forward, I don't know. I mean, I don't know
Does
how
the
soon.
benefits committee have a date they're meeting?
We haven't.
Our focus right now is the 403Bs, but we typically meet, Linda, was it in April? To start talking about benefits?
Okay.
I might chime in there that I know we don't have numbers yet, but I know, just in reflecting from last year, it seems like we were trying to crunch a lot of supplemental updates and changes at the last minute last
Yes.
year. And so I think it might be beneficial to begin looking at those supplemental changes that need to happen, or begin assessing those now, so that we might have Plan A, Plan B when it comes down to the numbers.
Okay. Yeah, I agree.
I like that point. I mean, you mentioned, I think, that you wanted to revisit the salary schedule subcommittee. I mean, if there's subcommittee work that needs or should get going, maybe that's a discussion we start to have.
Yes.
Even if it's not recommendations yet, it's just, okay, what do we need to talk about?
Right.
So is that what you guys are thinking, is that this, there needs to be a subcommittee specifically looking at the teacher salary schedule?
Not the teacher's salary schedule, but the
I was gonna-
supplemental salary schedule.
My heart
I
was
really
beating a
don't want to
little.
do that.
The supplement.
Your heart was beating. We're going to change it again, Rachel. I don't like it.
We did so much
Supplemental
work.
is where I was
Yeah,
going.
yes, I agree. The supplemental, because last year it did
Yes.
feel a bit
There's just a
rushed.
lot of layers there that we've
There
got
are
to comb
so many
through.
different, yeah.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense to have that committee formed and put together. Obviously, Russ would serve on that. I can't remember who was on it last year, but.
We did, it was Kent Glazer, Todd,
Oh, yeah, Kent.
myself, then some coaches or sponsors.
That makes perfect sense. So you guys just all want to be on the committee this year?
Yeah, sure. I already told Kent he had to.
Todd, Kent, John.
Well, I mean, as the
Jill.
athletic director for the district, I thought that
Yeah,
that made sense,
Russ.
so.
Okay, let's pencil in a subcommittee of Todd, Kent, John, Jill, Russ for the supplemental. And obviously, it's nothing that needs to meet next week, but,
Russ might be someone that we just reach out to when we need
got it.
an answer. I don't know that he necessarily has to
Okay,
be on it. Sorry,
so you
Russ.
four?
Yeah, I might also suggest a middle school activities director
Yeah,
Okay,
to serve on that, because a lot of the questions we had were around middle school contracts.
yes.
okay. We will volunteer someone
Yeah.
that they need to do that. Okay. So circling back to, so that's all of the compensation and supplemental salary schedule issues. Let's look at some of these other ones. I feel like the chunk about the calendar and PLC, professional learning time, that feels like a pretty heavy lift, and pretty detailed oriented. And I don't know if that's something that we feel like it makes sense to put together a subcommittee on, or if we just kind of want to,
I know we talked about that if something's going to change for calendar, it probably should be earlier, discuss them later.
yeah. I mean, that work is really detailed because I know from experience that as soon as you move one thing on the calendar, suddenly like 100 things are impacted. And so I do think it might make sense to put together a subcommittee that looks at, but not necessarily, like they don't have to necessarily attack the issue in all of these, but for NEA 3 and 4 and Shawnee Mission 3, 4, and 7, potentially get together and start seeing if there's a recommendation or even just data. Sometimes that's all those subcommittees do. That's all they do. They just say, these are the numbers that you need to have. This is the information you need to have. We'll present it, and then you IBB it. And we have sort of established a norm in past meetings that just because a subcommittee has recommendations, if we are all sort of nodding our heads and we're looking like that seems to make sense to everybody, I think that's fine. But I do want to establish a comfort level that we can fully go through and IBB something, just having in the back of our mind the data and recommendation from the subcommittee, that it's not binding on this group in any way.
Yeah, Stephanie's kind of mentioned that when you do form a subcommittee, if it's a committee that doesn't involve any of us, or few of us, that you have to really, you can be careful, because if they do a bunch of work and then we're like, oh, we don't like it, then, it's not a good thing.
And it probably helps to give instructions to that, or like information to that group up front, that you are not making a decision.
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
So just know that when you put the work in, that it may not be final. It has to be talked about here in this setting and fully negotiated through the process we've agreed upon. So keeping that in mind, do we want to try to put together a committee for that? Do we want to wait?
I think maybe, when's our
Our next meeting is February 16th.
Okay. I think it would probably be good to do the frame and focus
Okay.
for those,
Okay.
and then,
Then decide.
yeah.
So maybe we could potentially talk about, because I do think this would be a really time-intensive, I think this could be really time-intensive work, because of the number of issues. Some of it might be really easy. Like, I think we've sort of had solutions for PLC time in elementary kind of float to the top, and it might not take too long to review and look at that data, but other issues are going to take a lot of time to talk about. So maybe we can frame and focus that at the next meeting, and then decide if a subcommittee makes sense, and if so, all 5 of these issues or less than 5 of those issues.
Right.
Okay, so we can put that on the agenda.
Combined into a mega issue.
Right.
As we were just talking about this, I just had a thought on the supplemental subcommittee. There's not much on there, but there are elementary supplementals. Do we have an elementary person serving on that subcommittee?
We don't, but we should.
Yeah.
Yes. I can't remember their name at the moment either, but I think it would be good.
Yeah, I just wanted to
Get
make sure
someone.
that elementary was represented on that
Absolutely.
subcommittee as well.
Are you
Yes.
volunteering?
I mean, I was not necessarily going that route, but if
Yeah.
you want me to serve on that committee to
Yeah, I
represent
think that would be
elementary,
great,
I would go ahead and put my name out there.
And I appreciate that, because again, I can remember times where we've come back and be like, oh, we completely forgot. And then sometimes you are working within a narrow margin of available funds, and then it really gets messed up, so.
Yeah, you can go ahead and put me down for that committee as
Okay,
well.
awesome. Thank you, Nolan.
Of course.
Okay.
I know, I can't.
And then we should probably pick at least, because our next meeting is one of those half-day meetings.
Yes.
So I think we should pick another one, because if we're framing and focusing only, that might be an hour. So
But are we going to frame and focus the 5 that are going together?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it might take more than that. Might take more than that.
But I think you're right. It's always good to have something, lined up. In the bullpen.
Yeah, what time do we have today? Let's see, it's 4:20. Yeah, we might be able to knock out number 1 today, especially if everyone's had time to review the draft thing that I put in the file, the draft memorandum of understanding. Trying to think what would be, is there anything, Jill, that you think is not like an overly complex, or maybe you?
NEA 9.
Yeah. We can, I think that would be. Yep. NEASM 9. And that is the new team member academy. Okay. And then I think we should maybe pick the one we're doing after that, with the idea that we might not get to it at our next meeting, but just know what's next in the queue. And the reason is because we want to make sure we're prepared to talk about the meeting or these issues, so that we have the best use of our time together, since it is 10 people plus a facilitator trying to get together. So we try and be efficient, and so it's good to have it mapped out, because then if there's a homework assignment or data that needs to be gathered, that can be ready
Right.
at the meeting. So if we do 9, then maybe we should pick one of the district's issues for the next one, because we do, in general, try and do one of each.
One of that, yeah, back and forth.
Yeah.
I was
That shouldn't
thinking
be
number
too-
2.
I mean, we've talked about that for, a long time. We all know what that is and what the issues are. And so then Dr. Schumacher and I can work together to prepare data about our historical late resignation numbers. It's the only thing I think.
And I need to put our notice letter in that so that you can, because every year on our notice letter, we do put some data of different things that we've asked for, so, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll put that in there so that
Absolutely.
you guys can look at that.
And that's all in your notice letter? The things you're asking for?
Things like the name, FTE, step column placement of all the employees. There's a superintendent's report called SO 66.
Who usually, was that Dr. Atha that usually gave it? Who gave that to you usually? Dr. Atha?
Okay.
Okay, we'll figure out. Sometimes things happen in the background, you just don't even know who's making them happen, and then they retire and.
And then, in the past, we had a few issue statements with the staff meeting PD survey. Remember how we made that short little survey? So if you guys had that data somewhere.
Yep,
So anyway,
got
I'll-
it.
I'll put that in the folder.
Okay, so we have teed up for our next meeting on February 16th that we will frame and focus and really take a detailed look at what the issue is and the interests are for NEA issues number 3, which is PLC, and 4, which is calendar, and Shawnee Mission issue 3, which is insufficient time in various aspects at the elementary level, number 4, which is PLC, and number 7, which is professional learning time.
Right.
And then if we get frame and focused, perhaps considering whether a subcommittee is appropriate, and if so, who serves and what are our directions to that team, or ask, I guess, of that team. And then if we get through that, we will tackle NEA-Shawnee Mission 9 regarding the new team member academy. And then if we get through that, we'll be prepared to at least start late resignation with presentation of information and data on that. I think that's good.
Yeah.
Do you guys need anything in regards to NTA? Any information that I need to be prepared for? No, just
No.
a discussion? Okay.
Yeah.
if everyone's comfortable with that, we can look at this collective commitment is something, so from a phrasing perspective, we have decided to keep us all on the same page to use two different terms in here for when we come to an agreement about something. A collective commitment is something that we are going to hold each other to. The district's going to hold the association to it, and the association's going to hold the district to it. It is not something that is hard-coded into the negotiated agreement, but it is written and executed. And so we can go back and look at it and say, these were the commitments and the promises that we made to each other. This really sort of developed when we decided to go from traditional negotiations to IBB. And I copied and pasted it from last year and changed the dates. So I always try and be really transparent if I've changed any language or wording, highlighting it, redlining it. So it just verifies that we are going to use IBB, that we each have 5 team members. And I guess I need to check this because we kind of changed our timeline and procedure. So paragraph 3 says we will meet twice in the months of February and March, but we already have our April meeting scheduled, right? So I'm going to say we'll meet twice in February, March, and April, and we'll schedule additional meetings as needed. And of course, we can always, I mean, again, it's always a challenge when you
Right.
have 10 people trying to get together, but, and then we have that meetings are generally scheduled from 3:15 to 5:15. Now, today we did 3:30 till 5?
5, I think is what the.
What time did we just schedule our other afternoon sessions? Is anyone going to be like running, like at a dead run to get here at 3:15? That
Technically, my contract time is 3:30. I did talk to my principal, and it sounds like he'll be able to give me coverage for everything. It might get iffy if there's like a late, last-minute thing, but other than that, I should be okay.
Okay, so, I think I mean, as we showed in this meeting, we're not gonna start without anyone. It's not a race to get here. If you need to go to Quick Trip and get a soda, do it. Like, we'll wait for you.
Heard.
Yeah,
Heard.
we will wait for you. I know you've been working all day. We're not gonna start without the whole team here. And then I think the rest of that paragraph reads correctly, that we may schedule some longer meetings and we will provide subs.
I think we're starting though earlier.
At 8.
I
Yes.
joked that, I shouldn't say it. Everyone here likes to start at 8, yes? Okay, great. That's
No.
all it's- No, you don't?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm more of a morning person.
Oh, I wish I was. Okay, so, and then this is, the next paragraph just says, hey, at our first meeting every year, we agree that we're gonna look at this and make sure it accurately reflects the 10 people in the room's understanding. Our goal is, and maybe, I don't know what we want to do with this, because we've talked about compensation earlier, but we had last year that our goal is to complete the discussion on all issues other than compensation and insurance benefits before the first May meeting.
Yeah.
Do we need to, again, we do that because we don't want to push compensation and not have the time and space in May to have all the time that we need to
Right.
discuss it and put time pressure on it. It's stated as a goal. I mean,
I don't think that it means we can't discuss compensation and insurance benefits before May.
No.
It just says we have a goal of completing our discussions on the other items.
Yes. So what I'll do is, I think we can fix this on the next paragraph. At the first May
Okay.
meeting, or earlier if feasible, a budget presentation will be given to the team. And again, I think this paragraph is just focusing on trying to go to a place where we spend really the spring semester negotiating. And if we don't get done, we don't get done, and that's okay.
Right.
Many school districts go, I've heard November, December before they're getting a contract. I personally don't like that. I want to know that we're ready for the school year. I want people to know what they're going to get paid. And I also want us to be able to take vacation in the summer. And so I think it's a good goal to have, to try.
Yeah.
And if we don't, because there's a lot we need to work through, or we don't have numbers that we need, we'll meet again. And it might be in August, and that's okay. But just trying to set us up to meet that goal if possible. The next part is about issuing a joint statement after the work, after each meeting. And we just do that to try and make sure, A, that everybody knows what's going on. If they don't have the time to sit around and watch our meetings, they can kind of have the Cliff Notes version.
Right?
And B, just to make sure that our messaging is consistent. I have done those historically, and I'm happy to keep doing them. What I do is I get them done as quickly as possible after our meeting, and then I'll send everybody here, plus our communications folks, a link. Here it is, read it. Let me know if you have any changes, and sometimes people do, or they say, I don't think this reads correctly, or I haven't used a correct term, but normally they're pretty close. And then you basically speak now or forever hold your peace, because we both release it at about 9 the next morning. So I'll keep doing that. I'm happy to keep doing that. And then this next paragraph is what memorializes the difference between a collective commitment and a TA.
Right.
So if we are looking at changing anything in the agreement, we would call it a tentative agreement,
Right.
and then we would have a TA that has very clearly redlined language in it.
Right.
So that in late May or early June, when I'm trying to create a draft P&A for next year, I have exactly what I'm supposed to do to the P&A in the various tentative agreements.
Right.
And we've already really gone through 4 today, because we've already done it. We're still going to do notice letters. I know this seems silly, but when we first started IBB, I was like, oh, we still got to do notice letters. We still have to do these things. And so that next paragraph 4 is the way that we make sure that in the background, we're still complying with the Negotiations Act. Again, and I think with IBB, and I've heard other people say this, it's nearly impossible to get to impasse because of the way that it works. But if you do, I don't think it behooves either side to have like 10 issues that you're trying to have a neutral person like flesh and go through. And so that way we at least know that should we get to that point, which the goal is definitely not to, that we're still limited to the issues that are noticed in our letter. It doesn't mean you couldn't raise the issues next year. That weren't in your notice letter, you certainly could. It says we'll use the facilitator. So we're breaking that norm today, but again, only by consensus would we
Yes,
ever do
by
that.
consensus.
And then addendum A is just our meeting norms. And I think it's a good reminder. It seems silly, but we don't engage in caucuses or sidebars. So sometimes, if we do have an all-day meeting, we will go outside and eat lunch together, just so it's like, we're not caucusing, we're not sidebarring, the work is done here with everybody together. And that means that sometimes there's difficult discussion. So I would add that, we try and be good about taking breaks, because sometimes you just need to step away, reorganize your thoughts. So if anyone ever needs a break, especially during the longer meetings, we will do that, since we don't caucus. And we do try and respect time schedules, because again, we all have families and things we need to get to. We do try and, when we do homework, make sure we're ready and prepared for the meeting so we can be efficient with our time. And then just general communication norms, being respectful and not interrupting, all those things that you would have your students do.
Right, exactly.
And I put this on here because I always feel awkward about this. Just knowing that just because somebody throws an idea out there doesn't mean that it's necessarily a ratifiable idea. And so, and I think it's important to say this in this public meeting so that people understand that, right? So I could throw something out there that's totally crazy and not feasible and 0 board members would get behind, but it's part of the problem-solving process.
Can lead to me thinking of another solution.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I don't want people to hesitate, right? You may throw something out there and the entity that you represent shouldn't think that you're saying, oh, we would agree to this. It might be something you would never yourself give a thumbs up on, right? But it might start the ball rolling, or just be, let's throw all the terrible ideas up there so we can cross them off, right?
Right.
And I think, anything else, Jill, in terms of our norms or things that have come up in last year's?
I don't think so. Just
Okay.
rereading them, yeah.
So typically on these, the person designated as the lead negotiator, that's who signs our collective commitments and CCs, which is Jill and I. And so I think this is the part where we would check for consensus to see if everyone's comfortable with this collective commitment regarding the procedure that we use for this year. So I will go ahead and start. Awesome. Okay. So Jill and I will get this executed and save it in the folder. I might also, on those pieces of data and information that you asked for, try and just have whoever gathers it, put it in the folder for you, because then everyone can access it. I don't know. Some
Yes, I
things
think that's
maybe
good.
have to be emailed to you, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
And then right after this meeting, I'll finish a joint statement and share it with everybody. If you read it and it looks good to you, that's fine. And if you need extra time, or just let me know. We're not on an actual deadline. We obviously want to be timely with letting all of our stakeholders know how negotiations are going, but we have delayed before because people couldn't read it in the evening, so.
Right.
Okay, I think we've met our time today. I think Jill and I will follow up with our facilitator, and we'll let you
Yes.
know, and get some assurances that she can facilitate for our next meeting and all of the
Exactly.
meetings thereafter.
Right.
You won't have to listen to me talk as much if we have a
Oh, it's all
facilitator.
right.
Sorry about that. Does anyone have anything else before we break for our first meeting?
Nope.
Awesome. All right, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you.